Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 10 of SuperSports, the review series, as the name suggests, for the SuperSports class vehicles of Gran Turismo 6. Now, if you're new to the series, SuperSports vehicles are categorised in this series as vehicles which are beyond normal level sports cars, but not quite on the same level as a full-on supercar. And this car actually pretty much perfectly defines this series, primarily because of one major advantage and disadvantage, and that is it cannot be tuned. Now, saying that something cannot be tuned may sound like an odd thing to classify as an advantage, but I'll get more to why that is later on in the video. But the car is, of course, the Toyota FT-1 concept. Now, there are two versions of this car on the game. There's the standard FT-1, and there's this version, which is the graphite concept. Now, it's to be noted that whichever version you have, you cannot change the colour afterwards. The graphite only comes in that colour, and the normal version cannot be repainted. So choose the version that you want carefully. And the reason why I say that is the price. This is a $500,000 credit car, which makes it one of the most expensive cars in this particular series. That's a supercar amount of money for a car which cannot even be tuned. So, not being able to be tuned could be a very big downside based on whether or not the car is good or not in, of course, its stock form. So what is this car like in its stock form? Well, thankfully, it's very good. Now, this car, when it first came out, didn't really interest me that much. I'm not a huge fan of Toyota in general. There are a couple of models which I like, but they're not a particularly exciting company for the most part. When this car came out, I didn't really see any relevance to it. It was just another design exercise that would never see the light of day. Now, over time, since this was released on the game, which was of course as a free DLC, it has gained more relevance. They made this secondary version to show off the design of the car more, which is unusual for a company to do that with a concept, especially one which they've said is not going to be a model at any point. Now, the fact that they've said that could be taken as fact, but companies say things like that quite a lot, and you still end up seeing models which are very similar somewhere down the line. A lot of people have speculated that this could be the new Supra. Now, that was what piqued my interest, because I do like the Supra, and the idea of a modern interpretation of that does sound very cool, in the same way as a modern RX-7 really piques my interest. But Toyota, of course, said that this is not going to be a Supra, but that they do plan a Supra in the future with a collaboration with BMW, possibly providing engineering and tuning, which is an interesting concept. That doesn't exactly excite me. I'll have to see the car first. If it looks anything like this, then I'll probably be on board. Now, the real concept car of the FT-1 does not have an engine or any real tangible specs, so Polyphony had to make them up for the game. As it happens though, the specs that they made up are pretty good. Now, I wasn't able to find a torque figure, etc., or the max revs or that kind of thing, or not the max revs, but peak power revs, etc., because those specs just aren't provided. You can find out a couple of specs by comparing it to other cars in your garage, and I was able to find out that with an oil change, this car puts out 510 horsepower and weighs in at a surprising, to me anyway, 1,320 kilos. And the reason why I say that's quite surprising is this cannot be tuned, as we said, and it's pretty much a road-based model. And if you compare that to any of the other cars in this series, that's quite lightweight. That's lighter as standard than some other cars when fully tuned in terms of weight loss. Now, of course, as we said, those specs aren't real, but as they made them, it does make the car a very good natural rival for the Lexus LFA, and of course what would be its real-life main rival, were it to be produced, of course, the Nissan GT-R. And of course a potential RX-7, which may come down the line at some point, depending on how Mazda chooses to market that car. What does this car have to offer in terms of actual usable performance, though? Because not being able to tune it means that it's either going to be useful or useless. Well, from a competition point of view, its range of effectiveness, to be completely honest, is more limited than some, for obvious reasons. If, however, you put it up against the stock versions of LFA or GTR, etc., it is a pretty competitive car, mainly because it only sits at 551 pp, and at that level it can do around 190 miles per hour and accelerate around the same kind of pace as its rivals. Of course, they have to be stock, though, for that to be competitive. Now, as far as the handling, obviously that's dependent on tyres, as with any vehicle, but with racing soft tyres, it handles extremely well, and actually, to some extent, combines the handling characteristics of the LFA and the GTR, at least in my opinion. It has that kind of sharpness and engaging feel of the LFA, but also the kind of technological and electronic governing feel of the GTR, which combines to give it a unique character all of its own, and the fact that you can't tune it actually helps to keep that available at all times, because often when you tune a car, you lose some of the character by nature of just trying to make it as quick as possible. And that is why at the start of the video I said that this car not being able to be tuned actually has an upside, and that is you just enjoy driving. And that's not something which can be said about many cars in the game, because we're so focused on getting them to drive fast that you forget the joy of driving them and feeling what that car's unique personality is. But with this car, you feel that all the time. And although I wasn't a fan of it originally, I actually really enjoy driving this car now. Now, for 500,000 credits, is its performance worth it? Of course not. There are much faster cars for much lower prices. But if you're looking for something different and very engaging to drive, the perfect cruising car, for instance, then it is a very worthy choice and a different from the norm. So that's it for this episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.